Hello, Brother Monroe here. Welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. And don't worry about the ship. They are just there to look pretty whilst I talk about some things. Well, what am I talking about today? Well, I'm talking about something very simple. I want to talk about 10 things I would like to see in the next version of Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, which will presumably be called 1.10 or something like that. So I've been thinking a lot about the direction of the game, and the devs have said a few things in terms of what they want to build, but I wanted to get my thoughts out because I have been thinking about it. I like the game. I would like it to succeed. And that's what I've been thinking about. So, first of all, my number one thing that I would like to see, and this is a little bit of low-hanging fruit, is I would like to see the minor nations be fleshed out. And I know the devs are going to do this, but I think that it's cool that the developers kind of want to think about doing something like that, and how they do it is really what's interesting to me. So there are a few ways they could go. I think a very requested feature from people on my videos is the ability to design ships for the minor nations and sell them stuff. And how could that be done? Because I think the big problem for me has been, the AI doesn't really have a way of telling whether a ship's any good. And there was a really good idea from a comment on a recent video that, well, make it so that the AI will only buy ships that are from a design that you are actually using. So I don't know if the AI is capable of getting access to your battle data. But for instance, here the Apostol Piotr or Peter, can they access damage dealt versus damage taken, stats, or number of battles they've been in, ships sunk, or something like that? Would be really, really handy to have access to that for the AI to make an informed decision on whether it wants to purchase a ship or not. Or at the very least, just kind of knowing, well, the player has built 10 of these. I'd quite like one. Fair enough. I think that would be a good way of getting around players potentially building deliberately rubbish stuff for export. So that was my number one choice. Minor nations, really excited to see what they do with them. Really excited to see what the kind of diplomatic options are with them, which I'll come back to later, and how they might spark wars between the major powers and things like that. Could be really, really interesting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing minor nations. The second one, and this is something that, again, the developers have mentioned, I would love to see it in 1.10, and that is shareable or importable designs that the players make. So if I make a ship, I only made this one, by the way, for this little B-roll here. If a player makes a ship, it would be fantastic if there was a way to share them. It would make doing, selfishly, it would make doing Taskmaster challenges so much easier. It would make doing things like community challenges a lot easier, where, send me the ships that you have, and I'll fight against your best designs, things like that. And I think that would be really, really cool if there was a way for players to share designs, but as well a way for players to import their designs into the game so that the AI could use it as a template. And this is, again, something that has been mentioned that the devs are looking at. And that would be such a cool feature. It would really help the AI seem a lot more threatening if it was using player designs, and if there was this way of loading up player designs into the game for you to fight against. And I think that could add a huge huge amount of variety and interest to the game. I think that's a really cool feature. I'd really love to see them bring it in very, very soon. The third thing I'd like to see, and these are in no particular order, by the way. The third thing I'd like to see is a bit of a performance upgrade. So currently, I'm running a battle with a reasonable number of ships. I have my graphics turned up to Ultra. And currently looking at my system monitor, I am stretching my GPU, which is not a particularly fancy GPU, but it's running fine. And my CPU is not really being stressed at all. In large battles, the problem is not so much the GPU, which can handle it, unless there's a lot of smoke on the screen, and then my poor old trusty 1660 Ti does start to struggle a little bit. But I never really see Dreadnoughts using all of my CPU, and I don't think it addresses the whole CPU. I'd love to see some performance improvements. I don't have a particularly high-end computer to stream this, and sometimes the game will be slowing down, chugging, frame rates will drop off really, really badly, but it's not even using 100% of my system. So I think utilizing what players' computers can do, definitely a good option. You know, let the game access some really powerful machines. I am in the market for building a new machine currently. I would love it if I see an uptick in performance, but I probably won't, because it's usually the game engine for Dreadnoughts that is limiting it. And I would love to see a little bit more performance in that respect. I'd also love to see, you know, the AI design process being a little bit snappier, loading a new campaign being a little bit snappier, and things of that nature. I know that can often come a lot later in terms of the game design, but I would just like to see the performance of the game improve just a little bit, and I'd like to see a little bit of a focus of that in 1.10. I mean, I don't know anything about game development, so what I'm saying may be completely stupid, but I would just like to see a little bit of a performance improvement in the game, particularly for large battles. So if you've got 100 plus ships in a battle, the game really does start to crawl along, particularly on the higher time compressions. Yeah, I'd just like to see it being able to use the horsepower that's available to it. Number 4, I really, really want a pre-battle deployment option. Now, if you have played any of the Total War games, you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about right at the start, where it can just be a deployment phase. You load into the battle, and you can pick up your divisions, you can change them around, you can set them, you can set up where the ships are, you can kind of place them down, and things like that. Now, that doesn't have to be in the battle mode like this, the fully 3D rendered one. If that's too difficult, I think a little paper map with little ship icons that you can place, and or something like that could be actually really cool as well, like a pre-battle screen or something like that. But something to let us set up our fleets and ships before the battle starts would be a massive, massive improvement, quality of life improvement for players of the game. I think it would do away with a lot of the frustration that large fleet engagements can often have, where, you know, your fleet starts off in a really weird position. Now, I understand, you know, you might want to bypass it for ambushes or something like that, where, you know, your fleet hasn't had time to set up, but, you know, proper pitched fleet action, I should have some control over the where my ships are and what they're doing, because at the moment, as soon as you start changing the divisions around it, it gets pretty messy pretty fast. For number 5, I would love to see an overhaul of the diplomatic system. If you've watched my how to campaign video, you've maybe heard me disparaging the box that appears in the top left of the screen, that shows you, it's supposed to show you the ongoing war, or wars, but it is useless. It would be fantastic if there was a way for us to see more clearly what wars are going on, who is allied with who is at war with who, how those wars are going, how close AIs are to establishing a peace deal, things of that nature. It's pretty common in Paradox Interactive Grand Strategy games to get that sort of information. Just an indicator of, how it's going, who's fighting who. That's just a huge one. And I think especially with the minor nations joining the game, it's going to get very complex and very crowded and very difficult to understand. So I definitely would be very happy if they said that, we're reworking the diplomacy system and the politics screen to make things a little bit clearer for players. I would hugely appreciate that. Number 6, I would love it if there was an espionage system in the game of some sort. Again, the developers have kind of hinted that they might be considering such a thing. Maybe way off in the future. But it would be good if, as a stopgap, you could find out information about your enemy's ships before you actually get into a battle with them. So currently when you get into a battle with the enemy, you instantly know everything. Well, not everything, but you know, like, the headline figures on the campaign map when the battle starts, and if I hover over this enemy ship, I can now tell pretty much everything about it. It would be good if there was some form of Jane's fighting ships for Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, where if I looked at the United States information, it would tell me, well, they have 10 battleships, and 3 of them are Wyoming class, 4 of them are South Dakota class, and then the others are some other class. And then I could look at, well, what are those classes? And I can get some basic information like displacement, speed, and possibly main armament or something like that pretty easily. But if I want to find out more information, top secret stuff like what kind of armor are they using exactly, how thick is all their armors, all this kind of component information, how many shells they carry, that kind of detailed information, I would have to invest into some form of spy network, trying to figure out, what was going on. Because that was a big part of naval warfare in this era. Countries kind of knew, as soon as another country started building something, what was going on, with 1 or 2 notable exceptions. And ship designers knew what they were going to be going up against, so they would often design their classes to defeat enemy classes, or at least what they thought enemy ships were going to be like. And I think that would be a really cool feature, and it would add a lot to the game, and add a lot to the ship design element of the game, because if you know the enemy is running around, say this Wyoming class here, I only need to go faster than it and outshoot it in such a way that I can go through its 16-inch main belt reliably. I need to armor up against its guns, and you can design. It adds more depth to the design process, and I think that would be a cool one, because you can also give the AI the same information and possibly write the AI some code to kind of, if this ship exists, use it as a template, which kind of comes back to what I said for my point number 2 with the shareable and portable player designs. If you're sitting in the campaign and you're building ships, it would be very cool if the AI was able to take what you have built and design counters to it. Again, I have no idea how difficult that is from a coding point of view, probably very difficult, but it would be awesome if that is what it would be able to do. Number 7, I would love it if there was some form of officer system, probably just admirals, but captains as well could be very interesting, just to add a little bit of personality to the game, another little layer of interaction for players, where, you know, each fleet that you have assigned to a port or to a task force needs an admiral in charge of it, and you can have these characters who build and grow over the course of a campaign. But I know that characters in strategy games is not a universally liked concept, but I love Crusader Kings, so I'm like all over that. So I would love it if you know, you had admirals, and which admiral do I assign? Well, if I assign the admiral who's not very good, but he's in with the government, or he's a powerful aristocrat, or, you know, influential, or something like that, well, that increases my naval budget. That's pretty cool. Or I could go for the competent one, you know, and it could give you some interesting gameplay choices like that. In terms of how you select your admirals and how they grow and develop over time. I think that could be the classic add RPG elements to game kind of thing, but hopefully you kind of understand what I'm talking about. And yeah, I mean, it could potentially even go down to the level of assigning captains to your ships. Most players are only running around with somewhere between, well, the lowest is probably about 20 and the highest is probably about 100 ships. 100 characters to worry about is probably too much, so I understand why they maybe want to shy away from captains, but at the level of captains. But I think admirals would be certainly very doable. You know, you have a task force and you assign your best admiral to it, and you're going out to fight the enemy. I think that's potentially a very cool idea. And of course, very much a feature of the age, where who was in command was often a deciding factor in how engagements went. And great admirals were hard to come by, and losing a good admiral or a great admiral could potentially turn the tide of a naval campaign. So I think that... Oh dear, my battle cruiser just got torpedoed. I think it's potentially a very interesting way the game could go. Number 8, I would say, is some work on the penetration system. In particular, some form of penetration preview mode. So you can kind of see, if I hover over a ship here, shows me I have a 9% chance, mostly right in the middle. And these sectors are red. Some sectors are red. This is okay, actually. The in-game penetration predictor. That is not what I'm talking about. I mean, when you're actually designing a ship. And this kind of links into the espionage side of things. It's hard to tell whether your ships are sufficiently armored or have punchy enough guns against the targets you want. So it would be nice if there was some way of improving the way that penetration and armor is displayed, and some way of predicting your ability to punch through armor and to take hits. So, you know, if someone comes at me with a 16-inch gun, am I going to be okay? And it doesn't have to be every possible permutation of a 16-inch gun, just in general, am I going to be okay from that? And I think that would be a big help for newer players, especially if they can kind of go, well, you know, with the espionage system, I know my opponent is using these 15.5-inch guns. Does my armor protect me against that? Or rather, what ranges does it protect me against that? So, if I'm facing against this ship, the Saratoga class, do I have enough protection? Do I have enough punch? That's kind of a key question that is very hard for players to answer. Do I have sky guns again? I think I do. They're firing like directly up. So I think that would be super, super helpful. I know that War Thunder, not that I play it, has a kind of penetration predictor mode thing where you kind of take a shell and or a missile or whatever, and you kind of point it at your vehicle and try and work out what it will do. In the designer, they could take that approach. It could be as simple as you take your penetration table here, and there's a mode where you can say, show me against, and you can put in an armor value, and it'll go red or green, depending on whether you can penetrate it or something like that. And then vice versa for when you're armoring a ship, you can say, right, if I'm shot at by this gun, and at this range, will my armor hold up, and things like that. That would be very handy. I know the penetration is more complex than simply one number beats another number. You've got angle and all the rest of it to take into account, but some indication would be super, super useful. Next, ninth, penultimate, is mod support. Now, there was a mod for 108, which was enormous fun, made by Sapphire. That it was kind of a silly mod, unlocks some pretty crazy things, like 300,000 ton ships, and Mark V 20-inch guns, and you could go up to like 23-inch guns, and oh wow, look at that, and things like that. Very cool. I would love to see modding in the game. I mod pretty much any game I can play. Skyrim I have modded to hell and back. Kerbal Space Program I mod to hell and back. Paradox games I mod to hell and back. Like I would happily have a ton of mods on Dreadnoughts, and I'd really enjoy featuring mods and talking about them, doing videos on them. Like, there's a lot of content for me personally there. But as well, I think it would be good for the game and good for the community, especially if there was not necessarily mod support, but Steam Workshop. So if the game, Dreadnoughts, had a Steam Workshop, and you could use that Steam Workshop possibly to share ships, even something as simple as that, to share designs and ships, which was my number 2 point, through the Steam Workshop, that would be amazing. I would love to sit and make campaign starter ships for people, for instance, or work with Drakenifel to produce historical ships for people to fight against, and they can load those into the campaign. Even something on that kind of level would be, I think, enormously beneficial for the game, and enormously popular as well. And I think it would do a lot for the game. So I'd love to see something like that, but full-on Steam Workshop mod support would be absolutely fantastic. There are loads of mods, from graphical to conversion mods, that I can see people potentially putting in, potentially adding new hulls and towers and gun models and things like that as well, for those who are more advanced and that sort of thing, or doing kind of more limited campaigns, specialist campaigns. Maybe you want to do historical campaigns where someone goes in and makes Spanish-American War or something like that, or World War I or World War II type scenarios where you have the historical ships and you have them where they started and things like that, and you can do all sorts of cool stuff potentially. And I think it would really unlock a lot of value for the game, and a lot of goodwill towards the game as well, if the devs included Steam Workshop support, modding support, and things like that. I think that would be absolutely a really, really cool feature. Again, I have no idea how difficult it is to do, but I know that a lot of Steam Early Access games do have workshop support. The game is only available on Steam. They don't have to worry about supporting other platforms. I think it's worth considering and worth thinking about. And last, but by no means least, and this might sound weird coming from me, is multiplayer. Now, I loathe multiplayer games. I will actively be disappointed when I hear that a game is multiplayer. I don't play multiplayer games at all. Very rare that I will play anything multiplayer. But I would play Dreadnoughts multiplayer. And it doesn't have to necessarily be multiplayer campaigns, although that would be extremely cool. It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than the custom battle interface, but you can direct connect to your Steam friends and play. Like, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. But potentially, if they went full on with that and had multiplayer campaigns, which would be the kind of top end best you could do with that feature, that would alleviate a lot of the problems that people have enjoying the game, which is the AI. So the AI can be a little bit janky, can make things less fun because it produces, you know, trash tier ships that aren't fun to fight against, or it runs around with like a bajillion 600 knot torpedo infested destroyers everywhere. Or, you know, you encounter a bug because the AI's done something weird. Or you get angry that the AI's so good at avoiding torpedoes. A lot of those problems would completely be gone if you could be fighting against another human. And I would absolutely love the ability to fight against Stealth and Spartan in Taskmasters directly. That would be so cool. And taking on people from my Discord and the wider Dreadnoughts community in, you know, come on, I'm a YouTuber, take me on, challenges and stuff like that. There's so much that I could do personally with that in terms of content. And yeah, I am not a multiplayer person. I'm really, really not. It's not my thing. But I can see so many opportunities for Dreadnoughts if it did have multiplayer mode. So I don't know if the devs are thinking about it. They may be very strictly focusing on the single player, which, if that's your design philosophy, good. Single player is way better. I think somebody did some research into kind of how many, I think it was strategy games, but how many people actually ever load up the multiplayer mode, and it was about 10% or something ridiculous like that. Like, it's not many people really go for multiplayer, but games that have multiplayer, particularly strategy games, those are the ones that tend to last. Those are the ones that tend to have enduring communities that keep on playing the game, keep on talking about the game, keep on pushing the game and having fun with it. And I would point to two examples. One will be familiar to anyone who watches Stealth's channel, which is Wargame Red Dragon, which is a pretty old game, but it has a really nice multiplayer mode that is still very popular, and still keeps the game going, basically. And people calling out for it. We want the next one. We want, you know, Wargame set in the now with all the kind of cool stuff, that cool modern stuff. And I think if Dreadnoughts had multiplayer, you would get a similar kind of enduring, well-wishing towards the game. I don't know how else to put it. Another good example would be Supreme Commander Forged Alliance, which through the Forged Alliance Forever community multiplayer project is still going. Like, it's still hugely popular. Look up Guilecast on YouTube if you want to see people still playing Supreme Commander 1, which is an absolutely fantastic game, kept alive almost entirely through multiplayer, and it's had single player improvements through the multiplayer thing, and they're now getting a spiritual successor in Sanctuary. I think it would be a good option, even if it is, no, we're going to finish the single player game completely, and then once single player is finished, then we're going to work on multiplayer. Fair enough. Totally respect that, and appreciate that, because nearly, like, say 99.9% of my gaming is single player, and I'm sure that is similar for many other players of Dreadnoughts, but I genuinely think multiplayer mode could be really, really cool. Anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to mention. So those are my 10 things that I want for 1.10. Some of them, of course, are actually for at some point in the future, but I'd love it if those things were going in. So first one was minor nations and fleshing them out. The second one was for shareable designs or importable designs of ships. Third one was performance. Fourth, pre-battle deployment options somehow. Fifth was a diplomatic overhaul. Sixth was an espionage system. Seventh was some form of admiral or character officer system. Eighth was a way to kind of make more visible the penetration and protection of ships in the designer. Ninth was Steam Workshop and mod support. And 10th was multiplayer. So that's what I would like to see. What about you? If you're watching this, let me know in the comments. What do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me on any of my 10? Is there anything that you really, really want to see that I haven't mentioned? Let me know in the comments. And thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.